Live. So we are now live. Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Gravity Max live stream. So today we are going to be talking about Shakespeare, and we have our guest, Daikaiju Productions, Jacob, with us. How are you doing today? All right.
I'm doing very well.
Nice. So this is a fun little episode about Shakespeare and literature. So I guess you could say it's a bit, how would you say it? Like the topic's a little bit different from what we usually do. We're usually more like science-y based, but it's fun to branch out. And we hope that we can deliver an informative episode today. So let's just get right started. Okay.
Yeah. I'm going to say a very long sentence right now to make sure that my audio is doing exactly what they're supposed to.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Yeah. I think I made sure of that. I think you should be good.
I'm just checking.
He's just going to check. All right. Okay. Let me just start with the plugs. All right. So this video is not intended for children under 13 years old. If you are under 13 years old, please do not watch this video, as the topics we discuss are meant for those with at least a high school level of education. If you are not 13, you will not understand the literary topics discussed in this video. All right. So don't watch it. All right. So visit the Gravity Max website at gravitymaxmedia.com. We have book previews there for like my books. We also have the Gravity Max news section, and yeah, that's it. But that's quite a bit for a website, I think. And of course, we have Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter, social media accounts. Links to everything in the description. All right. And then Sebastian, 128 Seconds, that's his YouTube channel. Go check it out for, concise educational videos. If you don't have the time for a full live stream, then you got to have the time for a 128 Seconds YouTube video. And also check out his Instagram and Twitter. Links in the description. All right. Finally, A Bottled Up Flame, coming to Amazon November 1st. So this is my second book in my trilogy. And I have not released the cover art yet, but that's coming next week, so prepare for that. And yeah, I'm very excited to publish this. If you haven't read the first one, make sure to go read it. It's not absolutely necessary, but I think it's I think it adds a lot to it, I would say. So definitely go read that if you haven't had the chance yet, because this book will be coming out soon. And yeah, it's interesting. On Wednesday, I had like a crazy day of like writing inspiration, and I spent like 12 hours, not consecutively, but over the course of a 24-hour day, I spent like 12 hours just writing my third book. Like I'm getting started on that, and I wrote 60 pages in total, and I can hardly believe it myself. I am very happy about this. Probably one of the most productive days in my life, I would say. I don't think I have ever been more productive in a single day. But it did come back to bite me a little bit because I ended up staying up like 3 hours later than I usually did and felt horrible the next day. However, the horribleness was diminished because I also felt good that I wrote 60 pages the day before. So, all's well that ends well, right? And Shakespeare. Willy Shakes, Hottest Takes. That is our episode title today.
Yep.
All
right. Here. All right, I just finished the sonnet. I said I was going to write a sonnet for this episode, and I forgot until like 5 minutes ago. So I just wrote it, and I am throwing it in.
Doing your homework as the teacher collects it. You want me to show it now?
No, don't do it now.
Okay.
When we get to that.
Okay. So, William Shakespeare. He lived, around the turn of the 17th century, which means 1600s. That whole classification system, blank th century. No, wait. No, it would have been the 15th century. It's the dumbest system. I do not like it.
No, it would have been the 17th century.
No, but this is the 21st, and we're only in the 2000s.
In the 20th, yeah. So the 17th would have been the 1600s.
No.
Yes.
No, wait. Oh, yeah, you're right. You see, it's not a good system. That's all I'm saying. It's really not a good system. I was right the first time. Oh gosh. Okay.
Anyway,
Around the turn of the 1600s is when William Shakespeare was alive, and he lived in England. And English playwright. I mean, not much to say. Everyone knows about Shakespeare, William,
yeah.
Willie.
Also, what we're doing in this picture for the Willy Shakes hottest takes, I'm acting out Hamlet, or not Hamlet, excuse me, Macbeth, and see the flaming ghostly dagger before me, which we're going to talk about later, and Max is acting out Hamlet, in which he is reminiscing to the skull of his uncle, I think it was.
Nice.
But yeah. So yeah, that's the reason we're doing that.
Yeah, that one on the right, that reference has got to be, it's one of the most referenced references.
Yeah.
Like, it's probably in the top 10. I mean, there are a lot of things that are referenced a lot, and there are probably some references that are so ingrained that we don't even think of them as references anymore. They're really just like things. Like, they're just things that you do and not even references, even though someone did originate them. And I think the whole talking to the skull, that has almost ascended to that level. It's always someone doing that. It's funny. But yeah, so, well, as you can see based on how referenced that is and how that image, that image in your mind of the person reminiscing to the skull, it just shows how prolific Shakespeare was. Like, I would say the most prolific writer, I guess, because
definitely.
Yeah, no one else can really even compare. And so not only does he have a lot of works, but they've all sort of ended up as classics that are remembered and, taught in schools. So, yeah.
Exactly. Yeah.
So that's
he changed the English language.
Yeah,
so
definitely.
He left his mark. Like, the only thing that's referenced more than him probably is the dictionary. And the dictionary is referencing from Shakespeare.
Yep. Yeah, like the word eyeball. He coined the term eyeball. It was just... So, yeah.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Yeah.
All right. So, shall we...
So the first thing we're going to talk about is script writing.
Yes.
Because
okay.
Shakespeare wrote a lot of poems, but he's most well known for his plays, actually, and we're going to do 3 of those later on. But first, we need to talk about his script writing for his plays, because he wrote his plays almost like a poem, which is why we're going to go into poetry later on, and after this, and we're going to talk about the specific like rhyme sequence, stuff like that he used, his specific meter. But with script writing, Jacob here is pretty good at script writing, because it's his forte. It's the field that he plans to go into and all that. So Jacob, you want to talk about how you write scripts, like even for just Dimensional? Like, what was your process?
Yes, Dimensional. So Dimensional was a funny one because I already had a sort of inspiration. And that's not usual. So I'll kind of, I think, like go over both of those a little bit. So like Dimensional started off with source material from like old videos from like 8th grade or whatever. And so it's still the same process with script writing. I like have what each character says, and the interesting thing that makes like a script special as like a type of literature as opposed to like a novel is that you only have the dialogue. All the my case, since I was writing a script for a film, all the like camera angles and all that was left up to like me when I was directing. And in the case for someone who was writing a play like Shakespeare was, it's left up to the director to interpret that script and like the character's movement, their facial expressions, that was not really included in the script. So it's interesting that way.
Yeah. Definitely. Yeah. It's the most integral part of any movie, of any play, or anything, is the script behind it. Because without a script, you can do some improv, but like an entire thing that's just improv, it can go south bad.
Yeah.
Like if you do an entire project and you just wing it on the last day, chances are it might not go well for you. Not to say that it won't, because I've been there, but script writing and laying out a formula after the vision that you have in your head is a pretty good skill to have, because once you go into like your occupation, your career, whatever you want to do, if you can have the vision and then put it out and be like, I want you to do this, I want you to do that, that's how you become a great team manager.
Yeah. And it's also interesting how it really allows for a lot of interpretation in different types of shows. Like specifically Romeo and Juliet, I would say there are a lot of like different adaptations. And a lot of these adaptations have the exact same script, like the exact same dialogue is spoken, but it's in like an entirely different context. Like one that I think I saw was like instead of, the rival families, they were like rival gangs. But they had the same exact dialogue, which was kind of jarring because it was, 1600s speak. Uh, but it was exactly the same. And so all that you could tell that was different was like their costumes and like their mannerisms and the way that they spoke. But it changed it so much. So script writing is really interesting because of all the different interpretations. So.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's kind of interesting because like you can take like any like the script, and I've seen this I think with Shakespeare. I can't remember if it was Shakespeare, it probably was, and make it into like a commentary of sorts. There was a play that I saw that was about, I think, the relationship between Greece and Troy and the impending doom on the city of Troy. But they took that script, and I think it's called like Tiger at the Gates or something like that. They took that script, but they had the characters dressed up with the Greeks as dressed up in Soviet military uniforms, and the people from Troy dressed up in U.S. military uniforms, and it kind of turned it into like a whole commentary on like the Cold War and the impending doom. It is kind of like reminiscent of like the Cuban Missile Crisis and stuff like that.
Yeah, that's interesting.
It can completely change the meaning.
Yeah,
definitely. Yeah.
Yeah. So, like I said, the way that Shakespeare wrote his scripts is partially related to his poetry. Like the beginning of Romeo and Juliet is written in his specific meter as a sonnet. I think it's like the beginning, like in Fair Verona. That entire narration is a sonnet. I'm pretty sure in Iambic Pentameter, which we're going to talk about, but to really understand Shakespeare and how he got to writing plays, first we got to look at how he started, which is writing poetry.
All right.
So next up, we got his poetry. Now, poetry, pretty cool, gotta say. It's like just straight bars coming out of people's mouths and then coming on to the paper through way of pen. Because that's the only way you can write real poetry, is to take out your quill, dip it in ink, and then put it on parchments so that you can just write it like that. You got to go all calligraphy on it.
Yeah, paperback purist.
Exactly. But Shakespeare did some interesting thing with his poetry, and we can get into that. But
all right.
Y'all know what poetry is. So yeah, Iambic Pentameter. So it's a little sus, I'm not gonna lie. The best way, so penta is 5, right? So it's like pentameter, it's like pentameter, so there's 5 in every meter, and it's struck, and I think it is here. I'm trying to see the best way to explain it. Yeah, it's got one short syllable or unstressed followed by a stressed. So unstressed then stressed is 1, and then you do that 5 times. and that becomes the iambic pentameter. And because the two syllables, one unstressed, one stressed, are repeated 5 times, that of giving you Shakespeare's signature thing of doing 10 syllables per line. So that's how it works out. So if you take this, shall is unstressed, whereas I is a stressed syllable. And then compare, again, the first bit of compare is unstressed, and then the pair ending is stressed. That repeats all the way to the end.
Interesting.
So that was like Shakespeare's trademark. That was his signature. That was like, you heard that when people were like, oh damn, this is Shakespeare. I know this is him. I know that's how he talks. So it's a pretty interesting thing. I don't know if he invented it, but he's definitely the most famous person to ever use it. And anytime you ever use iambic pentameter, people are like, you Shakespeare lackey. You absolute just groupie, you know.
Yeah, that's interesting.
But, yeah. I always like die if I ever try and write something in iambic pentameter, because I don't know what the hell the unstressed stress is, because I talk. I don't think about what I say, what comes out of my mouth. I don't, you know. But
so is it supposed to be like the vowels, or
it's the syllables? It's your emphasis on the syllables. Anytime you say I, it's like stressed, because that's how English speakers pronounce I, you know. Or if you say thou, like if you say thou art, if you just feel how your mouth moves with thou versus art, you can kind of feel that you put way more emphasis on art than thou, you know. So I guess that's kind of it. But Shakespeare was like a god at this. He could just do it, and he could be like, oh, that's unstressed, that's stressed. But have you written any poetry, Max?
Not particularly. Nothing notable that I really have on hand. I think every once in a while I would be done with like a test in a class, and I would just grab a piece of lined paper. But I don't know where those have gone. They're somewhere.
They're somewhere.
They're somewhere.
Have you dabbled in poetry, Jacob?
Not outside of class generally.
Yeah.
Although sometimes when I just make memes, and I make so many memes, I can combine the captions into poetry of its own.
The modern poetry, I love that stuff.
Interesting. Yeah, definitely. But yeah, whenever I would sort of do a bit of poetry, definitely like, not as structured as this. Just sort of like trying to fit a rhyme every once in a while, trying to make it sound good, which isn't like a very rigorous definition, So I kind of like that this is specified into a specific structure, because sometimes you can just be like, oh, does this sound good? And you're like, yeah, it sounds good. And sometimes that is good enough, but I think that sort of putting an exact science to it, like, was a great idea.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah.
So there are some in his poems repeated ideas, which are known as motifs. So that's what we're going to next.
Yeah.
So we have some funky images for you guys right here. The moon, the love, the murder, the book.
No, that's the magic.
Yeah, I know.
Okay.
It's magic. And then the politics.
Yeah.
So just going through it, Shakespeare loved to repeat certain things. Namely, like, he always used the moon, and the moon was always just a big thing. And it was like, he always used it to represent mystery or whatever. Anytime a character looks up at the moon, it's like they're in deep emotional trauma land. With the heart. That's what Shakespeare is most famous for, is writing stuff about love. All the plays that we're going to talk about later love to some degree. In every single poem, every single play, at least like one person dies or like almost dies and all that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
There's sometimes a magical element, sometimes not. There definitely did a range of things. One could be based in reality, and the other has like fantastical elements and stuff. So again, we're going to talk about that range later on. And then there's always politics. So because Shakespeare was around in the 1600s, he would write about politics from a little earlier, like when there are kings and like queens and without like parliament. He would write about, so pre the Magna Carta and all that. And
did he ever show any interest in like his modern politics?
He really did like the king type without any parliament, but I don't know. Everything I've read involves a parliament, which is interesting. But yeah. So I think just the talking to the skull has become a motif. He uses death as a thing quite often. But yeah, so these are just repeated things that you can look for in your Shakespeare story to let you know that it is a bona fide, certified Shakespeare.
Yeah. So do you think he had some sort of like dark event in his life? Because like some of this can be like with the murder and the like, I don't know, magic a little, like the moon a lot. Like he seemed to have, and he wrote a ton of tragedies. Like he seemed to have maybe a dark state of mind. Was there a reason for that, or did he just sort of enjoy telling dark tales, like spooky stories?
I don't know. I don't know what the hell
Oh, okay.
happened.
Yeah. Yeah, sometimes people just like to tell stories like that.
Yeah.
What I've heard is like we don't know that much about his life. Like we don't even know if he really existed, really, do we?
Oh yeah, those theories. I love
That's
it.
like a whole debate.
Mm-hmm.
My personal theory about why he's always writing such good stories, it's because how else to create stories except living them out in life? Shakespeare was the man behind the slaughter.
He was.
The man behind the slaughter. Yeah. Well, that's interesting that you brought up that, he might not have existed. I think like there's probably like more evidence him specifically, like because he is fairly recent in the grand scheme of things. But it's interesting, like there is seriously like if you go back to like Greek times, like ancient times, there are some Greek philosophers that people aren't even sure existed. They're like, oh, they might have just been like a rhetorical device that the other philosophers used. Like, look at Jimmy. Jimmy was such an idiot. This is Jimmy. And they would write things like that Jimmy did. Or Jimmy was an actual person and, the philosopher. So it's pretty interesting that for a figure that's as recent and as famous, that there's some that would say that there's actually an argument to be raised. So, yeah, that's interesting.
Yeah. But yeah, so what Shakespeare got kind of popular for was writing poems, first of all. And then he wrote, specifically, he was big on sonnets, which is the next thing that we're going to talk about.
All right. Should I go to the next slide?
Yeah.
Okay. All right. Sonnets.
So he is... so a sonnet rhyme scheme goes, you rhyme the first and third lines and the second and fourth lines of each thing, and you repeat that pattern 3 times, so that will give you 4 times 3, gives you 12 lines, and then you get a couplet at the end with just 2 lines that rhyme. So if you go through this, you can see that the first and third lines of every bar of 4 rhyme, and the second and fourth lines of every bar of 4 rhyme. So paint, acquainted. I guess that's passion.
Yeah,
but
it's the long S. The long S that looks like half of an F. Yeah, passion and fashion.
Passion, fashion, rolling, controlling. I hate how he spells controlling.
Controlling. Yeah. Gazeth.
Amazing. Yeah. So all of that, and then it goes all the way down to pleasure and treasure. So, that's his rhyme scheme. That's what he got famous for. He wrote so many poems. I can look up how many sonnets he wrote.
I think it was over 100, right?
Had to have been. 154 sonnets.
That is a lot of sonnets.
A lot of poetry.
Yeah.
Yeah, 2 whole volumes.
So the sonnets, did they also follow the iambic pentameter?
Yeah, some of them definitely did.
Okay.
Nature's own hand painted. That's 11 syllables.
Ooh.
Unless he pronounced something different. Let me check the second line. 11 again.
Oof.
11, man. It makes me think that maybe it is. But it's like the way that he pronounces something is different than ours. But anyways, yes, definitely in some sonnets, he definitely did use that iambic pentameter. In fact, I would say probably more often than not, he used it.
Okay. I guess I just picked a anomaly.
Yeah. It's also possible he could have just like bent the rules a bit. Like maybe it is iambic pentameter, but then with like 1 extra syllable or something. Like a derivative.
Yeah, all of these are 11 syllables. Like literally all of these lines.
That's really interesting, actually. That could have been an intentional, like, he didn't want to sort of fall into too much of a rut, I guess, too much of a consistency. He wanted to spice it up a bit, surprise everyone.
It is following the unstressed stressed.
Huh. Wow.
Well, yeah, because in the word woman, you stress the "w" and not the man. So unstressed, stressed, man, face has to be stressed with not stressed. Nay, that's stressed. Yeah. So he definitely is following it. So I think this is in iambic pentameter. There's just like the extra syllable.
Nice. So that's really interesting.
Remix.
Yeah, remix.
This remix to Ignition.
Yeah.
Fresh at the kitchen.
Nice.
Yeah. So I wrote a sonnet for this episode.
All right. Let's.
So here we go.
Okay, and present again. Okay. Bam.
All right. Do you want me to read it off?
Sure.
All right. Welcome to the Gravity Max live stream. What a ramshackle bunch we are. Sebastian and Jacob enter the meme, and Max lets us sleep in his car. He's the boss, you see. A landlord who asks no rent. I live in his house. Between you and me is either that or a tent. We are talking about Shakespeare, kind of a well-known guy, who writes poems that may draw a tear and writes plays that make your heart fly. But it's nothing compared to the book that stopped the clock. Yes, there's only one story I could be talking about, a truly dead rock.
Thank you. Wow. That was fast. That you did that in 5 minutes. Wow. Nice job.
Thank you. Yeah. I just want to see. I want to see if I can find something because before I even had the idea to do 128 seconds, I would challenge myself to do something fast, something. And there was one of our last assignments in English before was to write a poem, and I didn't do any work when I got home, such as me. So I wrote a poem really quickly, and I think it didn't turn out half bad.
Such is me. That's a great quote.
If I could find, I'll look for that poem a little later. But
Okay.
I remember it not being too bad. Is the thing.
Interesting.
I have. Oh well, I'm looking in the wrong thing, anyways. But anyways, yeah. But so this is a sonnet. As you can see, live stream rhymes with meme, R, car. Oh, it goes all the way down, then clock, rock.
Yeah.
That's just how you can write a sonnet. You can write a sonnet at home. Iambic pentameter is a little tough.
Yeah.
Oh wait, did I follow? Wait. Oh, 10 on the first one. Oh my god, legend.
Nice.
I fell short 8 on the second one. All right, but that first one came out strong.
Yeah, nice job. Nice job. Yeah, this is interesting.
But yeah, that's his poetry. That's how he started. That's why he's known as the Bard of Stratfon-Avon.
Yeah.
And yeah, so now we're gonna get into his plays. So we can go over to the censored play.
Yes, the Scottish play, as they say. There's a superstition around. I'm just gonna say it. Macbeth. Oh. That's this superstition. Especially in sort of theater crowds, there's a suspicion not to say Macbeth in the theater. I don't know where that originated. I suppose, I've heard stories that it was maybe the original production of Macbeth or something, like someone died, and a ton of anecdotal evidence where in productions of Macbeth over the years bad things have happened. And I'm like, yeah, okay, for a 400-year-old play, bad things probably have happened at some point while performing it. But I think it's really just from the sort of plot, the dark plot of the play. And so that sort of carries over into superstition backed up by anecdotal evidence. But it's fun anyway. Just little.
Yeah. Found the poem, actually. I found it.
Oh, he did. All right, let's hear it.
I wrote this March. Yeah, March is the third month. Quotes by Seb. March 2nd. All right. I wrote this in 5 minutes, if memory does serve. Gomenasai? All right. The water lays still, not a wave in sight. Gently, a leaf rests on the pond's surface. Lazily, a verdant dragonfly takes flight. Bubbles float to the top, without purpose. The sun smiles down, casting a gold glow. The very air seems to be in slumber. But underneath the water, tensions grow. Flesh is torn, blood turns water to umber. Violent wars waged, threatening all. Teeth bared, conflict explodes, a fiery bomb. Submerged, none are deaf to the Reaper's call. The surface remains still, forever calm.
Wow. Nice job.
That
took a turn.
It's actually nice. Good, though.
Yeah. It was that was great. Nice juxtaposition there. Just yes.
Oh, 10! Bingo! 10. Maybe I counted that wrong, but I think most of these are 10. There we go.
Nice legends. Job. Yeah.
Well, and 10 just sounds nice for a poem. Any poem, I feel by accident, I just made that first line 10 and all that. It's pretty common for poetry.
Yeah, that's interesting. There's something very human about the number 10. With our base systems, I don't know why we like 10 so much. 6 and 12, even 8, they're much better numbers to be had than 10. More specifically for base systems, I would say. I don't know. But it's hard to think of 10 removed from the fact that it's 1-0. Like, just trying to think of 10 as a quantity, it's like, what is its purpose? What's its value?
Yeah.
No. Anyway, let's get started.
Yeah. So,
Bam.
Macbeth.
Fantastical Elements.
The Fantastical Elements. Like we were saying before, it's a motif of Shakespeare to use magic, because back then they didn't know.
Oh, sorry, you froze up a bit there.
Did I freeze up?
Yeah, just repeat the lessons.
I was wondering if they knew the Earth was round at that point in time. When
I believe they did. It's an interesting historical sort of conundrum. I mean, they figured it out independently at many points. There's never been a consensus, as today there isn't a consensus, obviously, but I think most of the people in charge, like the upper class, probably knew. The lower classes didn't really have to know, so they probably didn't know one way or the other. You know what I mean? Just because of like poor education. And so if they were to just look around and be like, "Oh yeah, that's flat," then they'd be like, but the ships leaving a harbor thing, and the Greeks actually figured it out, like this Greek guy. So I think Shakespeare probably knew, I would say.
Yeah, he probably knew. But anyway, like I was saying, they still didn't know a lot of stuff.
Yeah.
So, like, not even just Shakespeare, but a lot of people would just be like, oh, it was magic. It was a witch that betwixt me, when in fact that was real. But Shakespeare built off of that and used the fantastical elements to show other things, to be symbolic of other things. The first, like in Macbeth, the flaming dagger that was before him. Is this a dagger I see before me? That whole thing.
Yes. Oh, that's like triggering my mental command because I had to memorize that in English last year.
Yeah. I got 100 on that, I believe.
Yeah.
But I think we did well on that.
Yeah.
Jacob, did you have to memorize the Macbeth speech for English? Jacob,
I recall. I mean, there was definitely some memorization in English. I'm not sure. I think I probably had to memorize like at least some passage. I'm not sure which one though.
Yeah, I don't know. I find memorization strange. Like I sort of agree with a lot of people when they say like, "What's the purpose of this?" But at the same time, it was pretty fun to do because it was. I think I remember I was like, I did it very emphatically. Like some people were just like reading it in their minds essentially. So I think my teacher liked that I was like acting it. So.
Yeah, no, definitely. But the dagger. Yeah, go ahead.
I remember English class covering Macbeth being kind of insane. Especially the final project. The final project was a film or like music, but most people did film adaptation. And we got a few gems from that. We got Neck Booth from that. We got this insanely violent and gory version that was produced by some classmates that had like grade A cinematography. So it looked like an actual like horror film, and the teacher was just like freaked out for the entire class over that. Right. And then we got my what was it called? Macbeth's Lasagna music video.
Nice.
And it was Macbeth, but it was PewDiePie's T-Series diss track instead.
Nice job.
Because that was relevant at the time.
Yeah.
That's great. But yeah, that's another thing. Like to be so good at writing stuff that kids have to memorize the words you wrote in school. Like 400 years after you wrote it, 400 plus years after you wrote it.
Yeah, imagine. Yeah, that's like another level of like immortality, That's very interesting.
But yeah, so going back to the dagger, what it represents is Macbeth's inner turmoil about like killing people, and all that, because his wife is like, you should kill the person, and he's like, but I don't want to, and his wife, do it and you're cool. But yeah,
I was just thinking that it's basically the dialogue between Macbeth and his wife is, kill him now. It's not the Jedi way. Do it.
Do it.
Do it.
Yep.
Do it.
But yeah, no, that's the thing. Also, we're not going to be giving a plot summary of all of these. If you want, dear viewer, you can get Macbeth from anywhere. It's
not even illegal. Like, you can just look it up, or you can look up a summary too. I guess that's something.
It does exist. But now we can go on to the second big part of Macbeth, and a hell of a lot of English literature. We got madness, man. We got straight madness, So madness, if you go to Edgar Allan Poe, you go to like a ton of other historical pieces. Madness is such a big thing, and especially from like England. I don't know what they're doing. But
do you think there was a high proportion of insanity in England at the time?
Maybe, dog. Well, I mean, what did they determine as madness? Because I could see two guys holding hands walking down the street, and they're like, they have lost their minds. They have gone mad like the raving dog. I could see that happening.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, in a time period before psychology really at all. Lots. I mean, 100% of mental conditions essentially would go undiagnosed because no psychologists or therapists to do it. So yeah, that's interesting.
Yeah, but madness has a big part in literature. Especially early literature, but still today, like, we all watch those serial killer documentaries. We listen, we read the like Unabomber's manifesto, stuff like that.
You do?
I'm sure we've all read that, right, guys? Right? We've all read it.
No.
But no, the thing. My point is that a lot of people have read that.
Okay.
And it's just out there for the public, for anyone who wants to read it.
That's true.
Anywho, with madness, it is, it's a great character trait. Like, look at how much we love the Joker. And he's just like, we live in a society, and got his madness to him, and we all gravitate, towards that because we like it as a character trait, because it's a strong, it gives a character flavor, and
that's really interesting. Like, why do we like insane characters?
Because they're entertaining,
But like, we wouldn't want to interact with them, you know what I mean?
Yeah, exactly.
It's like it's something that's like real, and it's like at the border of we can understand and empathize with, and we can't understand and empathize with.
Exactly.
Yeah.
But yeah, anyways, the madness was used as a character trait for a while, and in Macbeth, Macbeth and his wife are driven kind of nuts because they've been stabbing people, and
I'll do that.
Yeah, Macbeth sees the dagger, and then he sees his best friend Banquo stroll up after killed. The ghost of Banquo does like a little T-pose at his dinner party.
Yeah, that was fun.
Out and all that. But, it's just a character trait that was used a lot in literature. But we can go over to
wait. Just one more thing. Did your class have you watch the version of the movie with like Professor X?
Yes, with Patrick Stewart in it.
Yes. It was so great. The Banquo scene. I don't remember it exactly, but I remember him just like getting on the table and like kicking stuff around or something like that. Just like super funny. Yeah. Anyway.
That was such a weird movie.
It really was. It was like World War One themed Macbeth, which again, that's the adaptations, because I don't think they deviated from the Macbeth script at all. But it was all like World War One-esque. So yeah. Anyway, political / historical.
So Macbeth was a real king of Scotland.
Mm-hmm.
If you couldn't tell by his name, he's Scottish.
Mm-hmm.
Macbeth.
Yeah. Well, actually, it was Macbethid.
Yeah.
That was his name, but he shortened it because Macbethid just kind of sounds awkward.
But we still, even like history teachers will call him Macbeth just for simplicity's sake.
Yeah. That's interesting.
A real king of Scotland, and there was assassination after assassination that happened during his rule.
Mm-hmm.
And Shakespeare wanted to bank off of that because, like we were saying earlier, like 400 years ago, their history would have been like 400 years from them, kind of.
Yeah, so, Macbeth was in like the 1100s, I think, right?
Exactly, yeah.
Yeah.
So he looks to that for history, and he's like, I want to do a historical piece on that because, like, what else do they have? Like, they're like yesterday. Yesterday, you know?
Yeah, like, oh, let's do a play about interesting things 100 years from now. Like, they couldn't do that. Yeah.
They couldn't even do that. But yeah, so that's a lot of his stuff could be classified as satire because he showed the issues in the regal system and all of that. And we're going to look at that a lot more in the next play. But to close us off with Macbeth, we have the use of weather.
All right. Got the
is Theo having fun, Jacob?
Oh, can you hear him?
Yeah,
he was saying though, like Darth Vader at the end of Star Wars 3.
Yeah, but anyways, yeah, Shakespeare would use weather a bit in his poetry and in his plays, and especially in Macbeth. Like anytime something bad happened to a character, he would have it storm or something, or he would, like, the witches would do something, and like there would be a storm or something like that would happen, or there would be a full moon, something like that. It just goes to his motifs.
Right after he killed King Duncan, I remember it was like an eclipse or something. Like there was a solar eclipse, and everyone was like, "Oh, my horse freaking like jumped out the window, and like everything, all the animals and stuff went crazy, and like everything just went bad, because he like killed the king." So.
Yeah, but yeah. So now I think that can wrap us up for Macbeth. You know, it's my dad's favorite Shakespeare piece.
Nice.
So yeah. Next up, we have what's probably like one of my favorite is Much Ado About Nothing. It's a comedy. It's Shakespeare's funniest comedy. You know, everyone thinks it's his funniest. And we can get into why that is. You know, next slide, comedy. So the biggest comedic thing, and specifically between Beatrice and Benedict, who are two of the main characters, anytime they talk to each other, they have witty banter. So it's the dialogue that's funny. It's not very situational comedy. It's very like they have witty dialogue, you know. And Shakespeare's great at witty dialogue. So here's two quotes that show off that like comedic dialogue. So we have, when I said I would die a bachelor, I did not think I should live till I were married. You know, so he's saying, he's turning it on himself, because usually when people say, oh, I'm going to die alone, they're saying I'm just unlovable. But he's saying I'm just going to die really early, you know, a comedic thing, because it's turning the belief on itself. And then I believe this is Beatrice's quote. She said, some Cupid kills with arrows and some with traps. We've included a trap in the bottom right corner for
Don't
reference.
say we. Don't say we. This is Sebastian territory now. The way that we do the slides is I get the pictures for the first half and he gets the pictures for the second half. We sort of like meet in the middle. So this is all Sebastian territory henceforth. I'm just gonna set the record. Yeah.
We do not pretend this is my doing.
Yeah, exactly. Anyway, yeah.
Anyways, the comedy here is that she's saying that, Cupid, or love can make you fall in love with great people, or it can put you with, some terrible people.
Okay.
But it's funny like that. And Much Ado About Nothing is kind of a love story because it's going around with Claudio and Hero. In the first act, this Don Pedro, who's just a Chad, Alpha Chad, they have a plan to dress himself up as this other guy, Claudio, and profess his love to this girl named Hero.
Mm-hmm.
So, and that's the whole thing. And all of it is because of the way that marriage worked and the kingdom worked. They were trying to do that so that Hero wouldn't like Claudio or whatever their angle was. It didn't really pan out, but the reason for them doing that was to manipulate politics.
Mm-hmm.
And we're gonna get to that a little later. But first, we need to talk about Shakespeare's style. And we've touched on it a little bit, but the reason I wanted to touch on it here is that specifically going back to the witty banter, that wasn't very common. Shakespeare is the king of witty banter. And even today, you see those Tumblr posts where someone posts something dumb and then someone's posts this response that's insane, and then people are oh, that's a Shakespeare response because it absolutely destroyed them.
Uh-huh.
So we have we have Sonnet 116 by Shakespeare here. And the reason I threw this in is because you see it is a love poem. And a lot of sonnets are love poems in Shakespeare's defense, but Shakespeare talked about love nonstop. I feel like his wife was very pleased with their marriage.
Did he get married?
Yeah, to Anne Hathaway. But not that today Anne Hathaway that I saw at Walgreens. The Anne Hathaway in the 1600s.
Uh-huh. Maybe they're one and the same.
Certain actors, we know Keanu Reeves is at least dates back to the 1500s from paintings and stuff. Maybe Anne Hathaway too. You don't know.
Yeah,
maybe she spends odd days in the 21st century and even days in the 17th century.
Yeah, it was a really weird divorce. It's how it worked out. It's how it worked.
Uh-huh.
But anyways, yeah, his style involves a lot of love, but also intelligence. Nowadays it requires intelligence of a different sort beyond just a literature comprehension, because he's literally writing in what can be considered a different language than how we talk now. Because if you went back to the 1600s, they would be saying stuff and you'd be like, I don't really understand what in the hell you're trying to talk to me about. And they wouldn't understand what you're trying to say.
Mm-hmm.
He paints pictures basically. And I think this sonnet also shows it all. Read it in your minds, dear viewers. But he paints pictures and he puts forth situations, and you got to think through them, and you got to be like, oh, that's what he means, rather. So I just thought that would be good to throw in here, because Much Ado About Nothing is what might be the first rom-com, dare I say.
Oh no, he dare saith. I
dare say it.
The first rom-com. That's an interesting take. That's a hot take. Oh my gosh.
So next up, we go
Yeah.
to the mentality of Willy Boy.
Mm-hmm.
So I know I can go a little insane because when I'm working on stuff, Max did his little insane thing
Yes.
with working pages in a day.
Yes, writing mania. That was.
When you were working on Dimensional, did you ever feel a soft tickle of madness creep up your spine and into your cerebellum?
That's my secret, Doc. I'm always mad.
That's great. But yeah, so the mentality of Willy Boy, he obviously, like we were talking about earlier, like, did something traumatic happen?
Mm-hmm.
Probably. Because he wrote a lot of tragedies and stuff, but he also wrote a lot about love. So to understand Shakespeare, if he even existed, is to understand like why he writes about what he did write about, and through his work we can kind of paint, like, everyone has a mental image of what Shakespeare is like. He's a guy that doesn't shut up about love. You're at the dinner table with him, drinking your mead and eating your haggis, and you're sitting there.
No, never.
And you're sitting there, and Willy Boy just does not stop talking. He's there. He's like, "Oh, prithee me, I just outrose fell sky." You guys are sitting there like, I don't even know what he's on. Not brewskis. Well, this bard runs his mouth. But he was pretty famous at the time. And the reason why I brought this up here is because comedy wasn't really like people liked comedy, like court jesters and stuff. They were still in fashion, all that stuff. But people appreciated tragedies of comedy, and in today's time, I feel like that's flipped. Like, I would much rather watch a funny movie than like a sad one. Like Joker was good, but it was kind of a tragedy, kind of whatever.
Yeah, but, I would classify tragedy.
Yeah, I would say it's kind of flipped. But back then, people enjoyed tragedies more than comedies, probably because it was quite a crappy time to be alive in. Like, everyone had cholera, and like the average age was like 18, and it was like just terrible,
Yeah.
But so that's why Shakespeare did write a lot of tragedies. But when he got to a certain point of fame and popularity, he was like, I'm gonna write some. Nice. And that's exactly what he did. He just went out and he wrote funny stuff. But going off of that,
I just want to say it's really interesting that that Shakespeare was actually famous in his own time, because so many artists, like, historically, have just been recognized, like, today. So that's what, like, sort of caused him to write the comedies and stuff. Like, are there any other, like, ways that affected, like, as a creative person?
As a creative person, to be like, for him to be famous, like, in his own time?
Like,
I would say I can't really see a shift between sonnets when he wasn't famous versus sonnets when he was famous. I feel like he kind of just knew his craft, and it caught on. And he was like, keep going in this direction.
Yeah, so he wouldn't get a ton of YouTube comments that say, "Sell out, make your old videos."
No, I'm glad you did bring that up, because there was a slight bit of audience pandering. Because if you go back to Macbeth, he showed that play to the King of Scotland. He went over and he was like, there you go. And one of the reasons he actually made that play is because that King of Scotland was a descendant of Macbeth. King was like, Bud, I want you to write a play about my great-great-grandfather, Macbeth. And
was he happy with the result?
Yeah, he was. He liked it.
Really? That's so interesting, because Macbeth's kind of painted as, like, I mean, not the worst of the worst as a villain, but I don't think you come away from that play thinking, wow, what a good guy Macbeth.
Yeah, but I think it must have been funny for him, because, like, think about your ancestors, like, 500 years ago. You wouldn't really be mad if someone called your great-great great-grandfather a cuck. You know, you'd
Yeah.
be like, okay, he probably was. You know, that's what my grandkids 500 years in the future would be calling me. You know, they'd be like, look at that sellout on his Gravity Max live stream. Look at him. But anyways, so there is a little bit of pandering, but as he got more famous, he did feel a little freer because there wasn't like YouTube guidelines, there wasn't demonetization risk. So he would do some satire, and that's what we're going to get into next with the Regal Politics angle.
Nice.
All right. Regal Politics. Nothing to see here. Just two kings staring at each other. You know.
We got some chat.
Oh, of course.
We got Yui Film says, Willy Boy, that's a massive forehead, not gonna lie though. Man needs to sort that stuff out. The king must have The king must have later his grandfather. I don't know what that means, Yui. Maybe he's got a touch of the madness.
Brendan can't speak.
Maybe the traumatic event in Shakespeare's life was his receding hairline.
Ooh. That's why it's so many. Before, when he had hair, he went around and he the fields and the love and the girl, the soft touch of springtime. And then his hairline starts receding, and he's like, and the man slaughtered King Duncan in his sheets as he slept. You know, he just starts getting more and more just wretched and just sad and more tragic as that happens. That's a good theory. But yeah, so he would do satire about politics. It wasn't like modern day politics still. Again, I still don't know if he ever like a parliament in it, because it's always just kings and queens and arranged marriages and all that stuff. But
Brendan says he meant hater instead of later. The king must have hated, I guess, his grandfather. All right.
Yeah, but
COVID case?
Do they have the plague?
Yeah.
Anyways, yeah. So he would criticize Regal Politics, even while there were still kings and queens around. So kind of ballsy, kind of not. You know, politics of a little while ago, but who can say? But that is Much Ado About Nothing. I highly recommend it. Definitely one of my favorite Shakespeare works, and it's great. So next up, we have the most famous Shakespeare work of them all.
Yep.
We have the old Romeo and Juliet. And I realized that when I put this in, we just wrote it as R and J, and I realized that actually works. Because in the military alphabet, R is Romeo, and J is Juliet.
Yeah.
So you can, like, physically shorten it to R and J legally.
Yeah. Legal, yeah. Yeah, Alpha Bravo, then it goes Romeo and Juliet, definitely.
So, Romeo and Juliet is all about love.
Yes.
I love this guy. Because he's just so in love that it's painful, you know? Look at his heart. It's just so, like, that's the face you make when your friend is like, hey, do you want to get McDonald's? And you're like, I don't have any money. And the guy is like, you know what? I didn't ask if you had money. I asked if you had McDonald's.
Legendary.
When that happens. Or it's like any of that, you know? That's just love. Like when a cat comes over, sits on your lap at a party, and then the dog comes over and starts wagging its tail. That's the face you make. But, you know, it's the most famous love story of all time. It's, you know, all of that. And, you know, it's happened. It's definitely happened. That whole idea of the forbidden love between two star-crossed lovers and all of that stuff. You know, it's definitely happened through history. And that actually goes right into the next thing, which is why that probably happened a lot, is because of the love marriage politics. You know, almost all marriages were arranged. Whenever someone would have a daughter, they were like, "And you will marry Cleobold if they're whatever family, so that we'll have good relations." You know. And I put forth one of my favorite marriage politics of all time, the Habsburg dynasty.
Oh, it's painful.
Which, if you look at this family tree, there's so much inbreeding. And basically, after you get past a certain point, all of the children they have are like legitimately retarded. Like, I mean it in the medical sense. Like, they just cannot function. Like, the picture of this guy on the right, I forgot what his name was. That might be Philip, but I could be wrong.
I think this was like Charles II, right? Like this,
Charles,
I think, yeah, this guy's death caused like the War of Spanish Succession or something like that.
Yeah, no, you're right.
Yeah.
This is Charles II. I'm pretty sure Charles II could not speak or open his mouth because of how just malformed and messed up he was because of all the mutations. He was just like, just not vibing, and like he had so many issues, always 3 steps away from dying. And he was just so unhealthy. I can't really read how long he lived, but I'm gonna look that up.
Yeah, and he was so unhealthy that he didn't have any kids, and then that's what sparked the war because there was no heir to the throne. And I think at one point these guys ruled like half of Europe, which is unsettling. I guess. Yeah, this whole
Charles II of Spain. Damn, he still lived to 39, which is like, if I saw him, I would have been like, I might not see him next Friday for bingo because he's just so messed up. But he made it into the 18th century. He died November 1st, 1700.
Wow.
Also,
it's kind of
go ahead.
Yeah. It's kind of crazy. Like earlier, before I knew his name was Charles, I was like, well, I think we got a name for him if we don't find out his actual name. We can just call him Taserface.
Taserface. Yeah, no.
Taserface.
He does have actual nicknames. So he's Charles II of Spain, and he's also known as El Hechizado. Hechizado is how you say it. Hechizado. I'm pretty sure is how you pronounce that. What it means is the bewitched. Because there's any guy that looked like he was cursed at birth, it would be Charles II of Spain. He's the last Habsburg of the Spanish Empire. And
even in this photo, his eyes are looking in 2 different directions in this picture.
Yeah, like he just looks like a boot with a wig on top.
Exactly, yeah. He is best remembered for his alleged physical disability. Yeah, alleged physical disabilities, war that followed his death. So yeah, no, this was not a good guy. You can look up pictures of the Habsburg family. It's just messed up. Like, there's been so many different renderings of this guy because they just really try and figure out what he actually looked like. And because he's just so disgusting that it's like, it's like, how did this man get to almost 40 years old? But anyways, that was a little tangent. But anyways, the takeaway from that is that certain families wanted to remain in power, so they would arrange marriages. They would do that. Certain families had to associate. Certain families needed to not associate with each other. And that leads directly to the next thing, which is tribal.
Yeah.
So imagine being a Capulet. This post made by Montague Gang.
Yep. That old meme format. Very relevant.
I loved that meme.
Yeah.
I'm dead. But
I love the really abstract ones that are like just like so dumb, but they're funny anyway.
Yeah, so tribalism is people just trying to stay within their own family, people trying to just promote the people that they hang around. And this was so big, like up until like I would say even like through the mid 19th century, because you have like the families that everyone knows, you know, like the Rockefellers and all that, going up until the like Industrial Revolution, like, going up into that part. But this was like a big thing for a while because like a family name was power back then. Like now a family name like might give you money, but unless it's like a really high tier family name, then you know it's probably not going to get you anything other than money. But tribalism was super big because, you know, of the flawed politics they had, of the zero like human rights that were going on, all of that. They were like, well, we need a way to keep ourselves safe. So hence tribalism, where they just keep their family, friends safe, and they're trying to like keep themselves in power, keep themselves safe. And this is big in Romeo and Juliet because, like you see here depicted, I wonder if Shakespeare could see this meme. Would he be like, yes, the youth have learned well? Or would he be like, you idiot, you fat lard, how could you disrespect my work like this? I should have you shot, quartered, then shot again. You know, like, what would you say?
Yeah.
But this is the idea of Romeo and Juliet. This is why the love was forbidden, even though they were star-crossed and all that. But another thing going into it, another thing that you could speak to it is its reality, which is the next thing. So, Romeo and Juliet is actually one of the most realistic works that Shakespeare did, because there really wasn't any magical element, you know? Like, you know, two families hating each other. That's a real thing, you know? Like, I don't really like my neighbors on my left side, you know? Like,
wow,
and
he comes out and says it.
But like, and like my entire family kind of, yeah, we don't like the guys on our left side. So we as a family, we as a family unit, as tribalism, we do not like left house family who mows their lawn at like 3 a.m. no reason, throws barbecues like on 9/11, and like we just don't understand what's going on, and we just see so many different people. Like I see who I think is the dad standing out there. He's like this 5'8", you know, he's like this Asian dude, and he's just like standing out there mowing his lawn. Okay, that's cool. I've never seen my neighbors before. And then I look a couple like days later, and it's just this completely Caucasian family doing Caucasian things, and I'm like, what's going on, you know? And then I started hearing Latin American music blasting from their house, and I'm like, are they renting? You know, but we will never know.
Interesting.
But I honestly do not know their names. But you know, whatever they may be, you know, I don't hate them based on wherever they might be from. I hate them based on the activities they choose to do at the most unholy, unsanctimonious hours of the twilight's last gleaming, because that's literally when they're doing it. You know? But I digress.
Yes.
So Romeo and Juliet could happen, you know? Like, and you can look at that through any lens of history, you know, like racial, religious, any of that. Like, there's a lot of arranged marriages in, like today, and especially in like the 20th century. Lots of arranged marriages there. Wouldn't be too out of the question for a girl to be like, you know what, I don't want to marry that man because he kind of looks like a shoe with a wig on, you know, as Jacob puts it. So it wouldn't be so out of the box for someone to think about that.
Mm-hmm.
But did Charles II ever have a?
He did. They tried to have kids, but they were unsuccessful. Obviously, unsuccessful.
Yeah, obviously.
Yeah. But yeah, it's interesting because
oh my God, he had two.
Yeah, because the first was unsuccessful, and they're like, okay, we need. I bet it's the wife's fault that she's not having kids. Yeah, I don't think that's the problem there. Anyway, I think it's really interesting that you said that this is the most realistic of the plays. So you won't have, a floating dagger like in Macbeth. Are there any fantastical elements in Much Ado About Nothing?
The situations that the characters themselves in are unrealistic, but there's nothing really that's like magical. Like they talk about, like in the quote, they talk about Cupid. They talk about Cupid a lot, throughout the entire play, which leads people to believe that Shakespeare was insinuating that there was a Cupid behind the scene who was, shooting his arrows out. So I would put Much Ado at a more unrealistic level than R and J.
That makes sense.
But
yeah. I wonder, did they have like death potions that make you die for like 24 hours? Like Juliet uses.
They knew a lot about.
Yeah. I find that an interesting plot point. If only he had checked her pulse. But they did not know of modern medicine. Anyway, I think that's it, right? That's the last line.
Yeah.
Final thoughts?
We're all creators here. We all write stuff. We all, create stuff. And, Shakespeare is it, man. He's the guy that his works are taught in schools 400 years later. Mm-hmm. The guy to which there's been so many rip-offs and remixes of and all that. Everyone knows who William Shakespeare is. One of the biggest celebrities of all time. And, everyone knows him for his work, not because he, blew up a church or something, which I'm not saying he did. But, anyways, the Unabomber's Manifesto.
No.
Yeah, and it's kind of inspiring to think that maybe Jacob can write a screenplay or direct, do all the editing and stuff and write the script and all that. And, it gets taught in classes, like films later on. Or Max writes a book and a student does a book report on it.
Yeah.
Or, I write a book and I make, around $300 off of it. And I'm great about
exactly.
For the next week.
Mm-hmm. I think
that's about how much
book report, but I did use Max's book for a school project once.
Nice.
They said read a book, analyze a theme, and I did use A Truly Dead Rock.
Nice.
Teacher
that's great.
Liked it. He was like,
that's fun. Yeah, that's interesting. About Shakespeare is that there is very little from that time that survives of other artists. And there probably weren't as many artists at the time either because people were sort of worrying about farming. But I find it interesting that now, especially with the internet and the fact that, someone can have a job and also be an artist, I just find it fascinating that once the amount of time elapses, say 400 years in the future, there will be so many classics. I wonder what they'll pick of what's coming out today that they will say, these are our classics to teach in class. Just because it's there's so much of it, and that also makes me wonder how much will survive 400 years because there must have been more than just Shakespeare 400 years ago. And
Yeah.
there are obviously like some other surviving records of other people, but what survived is always less than what was. And so I find it interesting, like, I find it highly unlikely that the company YouTube or the company Alphabet Inc. would survive 400 years straight. So it's like, where do those videos go? There would likely be archive projects, but anyway, it's just very interesting, like time and posterity and all that. But yeah, so I would like to thank you, Jacob, for being here, being our guest this.
Having me on the stream.
Yeah, and I would also like to thank Sebastian for being my host as always, and being, very, what do you say? Like, he was sort of leading this episode. He knew a lot more about Shakespeare than I did. And I would like to thank you guys all for watching. Now, it has been reported to me that our VODs are cutting off short, so I am going to start a 1-minute timer. We're just going to sit here until it runs out. So
we can say goodbye now.
Yeah, goodbye. See you guys next time.
Yeah.
You don't have to keep watching. This is just going to be here reflecting the screen. We're at like 43 seconds. So, what are you guys' plans?
I was going to read the Unabomber Manifesto.
Uh-huh. Yeah, tell me about that. You seem to be...
let me take a really long drink.
Transfixed. He seems to be transfixed on that.
No, it's just I just find it interesting that people like will read that for fun. I have not read it.
Okay. Okay. Yeah.
But it's not going to make it into the VOD, so people are going to think
it may or may not make it into the VOD. Oh God. That is loud. Stop.
My ears, bro.
And to answer the question, yes, that is the ringtone from Jurassic Park 3. Okay, with that, thank you all for watching. End stream.
Bye-bye.